All right. Aloha, everyone. Jamie Champagne here with a special collaboration chats. I've seen it go live on LinkedIn. Philip, we are officially live on LinkedIn. We are going for it. I have special guest here with me, Filip Hendrickx. Woohoo!
Hi
Uh,
everyone.
so Philip, for those of you who may not know you just yet, we've got it linked in here on the announcement page, but why not give a quick intro of who you are and what you do and how do we kind of get in this discussion about facilitation?
Okay, so hi everyone. I am Filip from Belgium. I live near the center of Belgium, near Brussels, but actually in a very quiet place. And I have been, as I often say, BA for me means by accident. I am a BA, but I've taken business analysis professional roles in many different kinds and forms. And these days, the last few years, my focus has been on what I call inspiring people around business analysis, whether it's through training, coaching, sometimes still consulting, project consulting, teaching, all of those things. And also, I've been running the local IIBA Brussels chapter for a while. And now I have recently moved to the IIBA Global Board. So everything connected to inspiring people around business analysis.
Oh, awesome. I'm so excited. And oh my goodness, IIBA is so lucky to have you because, again, your perspective is great. And I think this is what's really cool. Business analysis is worldwide, it's this valued skill set, practice, profession. And so I'm super stoked to have that. Now, for everyone joining us, if you're live the first time, this is our collaboration chats. I host it monthly here on my LinkedIn, and we have both mine and Philip's LinkedIn profiles there. You should be able to click and follow us, connect with us, in fact, would be even better so we can continue the conversations. There's a comment section on there that even if you're watching the replay of this on LinkedIn, you can still comment and add in questions, thoughts, ideas that me and Philip can come back and add commentary to. So that if there's something that you don't get to see answered during the live session, or again, you watch a replay, please put the comments there because we want to continue the conversation as that's what's really today was all about. We got to have this great session at Building Business Capability 2025, one of the biggest business analysis conferences out there. And we got to do a session on facilitating facilitation. Yes, how to make facilitation work easy. Because I think we put too much pressure on ourselves and maybe it doesn't have to be as hard as we might think it to be, but facilitation is such a valuable skill set of our analysis professionals, both today and especially tomorrow, as we live in worlds of changing technology. So, Philip, for those who weren't live with us, could you give us what was your kind of summary description of our goals were and what we tried to do there during that session? And then we'll talk about what we saw after.
Yeah. So actually, one of the things that we together discovered as we were preparing for the session at BBC is that the less you do as a facilitator during such a session, the better, the more effective the session will be. You want to make things easy for the people in the session, in the workshop to collaborate and come to any kind of result you are striving for. But if they do the work and you just provide some structure to help them do that work effectively and in a fun way, then you will have had a successful workshop. So I think that was kind of an epiphany we both had, how important, how strong that idea is of making sure that people do the work, not you. Of course, it requires the right amount of preparation. It requires you to be quick on your feet if you see the group seems stuck to kind of make a change to help them get started again. But ultimately, the goal for yourself during a session should be, and I actually looked up a quote about this that I found recently. And the quote is, don't just do something, stand there. Now, we all know the inverse one, don't just stand there, do something. Well, during a workshop as a facilitator, it should be the other way around, ideally. So that's kind of the main message. And that's also why you called or you named our workshop Facilitating Facilitation. We want to make it easier on the facilitator. We want to make it easy for the participants.
And I agree on that. The part on how easy could you make it, and easy not just for them. I think we're really good about thinking of others and, wanting them to participate, wanting their input to help their solutions. And so we think about that and we burden ourselves with it. And I think that was the aha, like the structure we approached the session with and then said, all right, let the session run, let it be, let it live. And then what do we want to do after the session? Our focus on that before and after, that was our work. That was the heavy lifting. And it was, in my case, the observation when we were there, it was very fun. And one of those things I realized how many times I kind of like stood back and was smiling at you. We're like, okay, they're running with it. They're going for it. And I'm like just looking at Philip, like going, all right. I mean, like it's moving on its own. We have to
Yes.
say anything? Like we almost just had to like just kind of a few guardrails, like, okay, we want to move on to the next thing. Like let's stop and check in and just kind of keep them going. It took on the life of its own almost feeling, but I think because we walked in with that nice bookend structure. I mean, and that's what I felt during the session. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you have to have a basic structure in place. You have to be able to impose more structure if needed, depending on how the group dynamics are evolving. And so, yes, we had that kind of basic structure. We knew how to go through our different topics. We had a timeline. You could adjust on the spot if needed, but if you don't have that in place, it will very quickly feel like a disorganized, chaotic experience.
Mm.
To be honest, the first time we did a preparation session online as a webinar, we suffered a little bit from that. We had less time, and I felt like, okay, this was good content, good dynamics, but not as effective as we wanted to be the next time. And so we also learn from our own experiences. And so the pre, during, post structure is one structure. The timeline, what are the key topics you want to discuss? How much time do we give to each topic? What is the balance between doing collaborative things, plenary fashion, so that groups can share each other's results and discuss these, versus group work, versus us reflecting, giving instructions? Is that balance right? That's all part of the preparation. One of the things, and it's a very practical tip, that I really liked is when you updated the preparation, you highlighted the group collaboration sections. It's very visual to see, okay, we have enough or we don't have enough of those. Because it's a workshop, it has to be fun, it has to be active and engaging. Um, an example of a very basic structure that you can provide the groups with as they are going through a collaborative moment is make sure that each group assigns a timekeeper, that each group assigns a process lead who takes care of whatever structure is needed. Like we are all going to take first a minute to write down post-its individually, and then we're going to start grouping and discussing, for example. So the process lead takes care of that part. And then if you have one, a spokesperson that can share the results afterwards with the entire group of participants. So that's a very simple structure. You don't even have to assign people. You can ask the groups to start with assigning those roles, and then they get going. So again, you hand off a lot of the heavy lifting to the group. You just provide a little bit of structure to help them get that right.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'm seeing we've got some comments coming in here online. It's great. Robert Schneider, he's enjoys his time on the dance floor and he teases that the business analysis and dancing, they got some similarities. Lead just barely enough. I like that. Same on the dance floor. Light-handed leadership. I like that. With the boundaries, but autonomy, is something that I think we saw in that. I like he puts a comment here. Structure is a kind of muscle memory. It's useful so you can elevate your attention and energy. Those comments, thank you, Robert, for chiming in on those. Absolutely. And one of the ahas I had where I say we overdo, we overthink, we almost like feel like we have to over-engineer everything. Simple for me was we were trying to use our facilitator guide. Like I've used one before. It's nice. You can put your notes, your structure. What am I doing before, during, and after? And normally I love to give people like handouts. They always want materials or copy of slides. And I'm like, we're really not using slides. And the thought of when we're prepping, we said, well, what if we just give them our facilitator guide so that they would see what we did to prep? But then as participants, you would see what the agenda was and what we're going to cover. But then they also get to see the notes we had highlighted, like, where we were doing facilitated activities or where to reemphasize the goal, maybe those boundary items we're mentioning, and then what we plan to do afterwards. So for me, that aha of like, really keep it simple, don't over analyze it, was we didn't have to go make something different or special or unique for the participants just because they were participating. It was like, why not just share what you're already doing? And sure, they weren't part of the planning as much, but they got to see it. So now they had that awareness. We could answer so many questions before we even started by having that ready. So, like, again, it was actually way easier than I think we think about, because, putting this together. And I love it, Philip. Trying to explain to someone, I'm like, oh, Hawaii and Belgium, putting together a presentation in Phoenix. We are 12 to 13 time zones difference, depending the month of year. So, like, we are literally about as far apart as we could get to try to meet in the middle. And it's when I think we stopped worrying about over engineering it.
Hmm.
Give just enough that we have some space and a trusting factor to give it a try. I think that's
Hmm.
something we had a very good audience. We had people in the room
Yes.
that were excited to learn facilitation. So that helped us. But that's like one question I had, Philip, because I wanted the space today that even my approach I mentioned to Philip for everyone is I really just wanted to create a space that me and Philip could unpack. We could kind of think about the session and really talk about what's next. Because think about your own meetings. How many of you have a meeting on your calendar and there's very little room in your day to day to like just even do the follow up activities, to send a recap or a reminder? Like you're barely feeling that chance to follow up. And I told Philip, I said, I love space to where we block our calendars to carve out time to reflect, to plan the next steps, to be active. And so I said, I just had a few questions to reflect on, what was an aha or a takeaway from the session? And, or what kind of questions? And the one question I had for Philip's thought, because I worried about this myself, was did our session go well? Because we had the right people in the room, the people who
Hmm.
wanted to be there. That if we had put people in there who needed to hear facilitation, to needed to kind of grow their skills because they're not very comfortable today, would the session have gone as well as it did? Or if not, like what would we might have done differently? And so that was like
Hmm.
one question I had. Do we had the best audience anyone could have asked for.
Hmm.
We had motivated VAs ready to go. Would our session have gone as well if we walked into a room of stakeholders who were like, what's a VA and why do I need you? I just
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
project.
So it's a very good question. I also had the feeling during the session we really have to do almost nothing here. I was actually also surprised by that experience. So yes, we had a very eager and excited audience, people that really wanted to dive in and just do the work. That will not always be the case when you're doing a workshop about whatever topic is high on the list in your organization. But that's part of the preparation, knowing your audience, inviting the right people, doing some work up front, either individually or in one-to-one meetings or by email, gathering input from those stakeholders that you think might kind of make things a bit more difficult, have things run a bit less smooth during the session. So it's part of the preparation work. Um, it's also part of the preparation is just getting experience with lots of tools and techniques so that on the fly you can change the technique. For example, I was in a workshop once and we were going to do a round table where people were providing their input. And after the first person, who of course took more time than expected, I realized this is not going to work. We're going to exceed the time limit. We're going to have a boring session for everyone. So I switched to a session, a system where people first wrote down their thoughts individually, then came together in pairs, discussed them, filtered their ideas, then came in groups of four, and then in a plenary fashion. It was much more interactive, much more engaging, and much quicker. Um, but that comes with experience. So I think the key there is that you have to see every kind of collaboration moment as a moment where you can practice your facilitation skills. And so, yes, we probably had a very kind audience, a very eager audience, but that's the right place to build your experience with people you know, with people you feel comfortable with people you know I can make a mistake and they will not kill me for it. With your BA peers at a conference at your company and just build up that experience as you go. And then the next time with a more difficult audience, it will also go better than if you would not have had that experience.
Absolutely. And I think the more you're trying to encourage it to be a safe environment for them, I think that's a great aspect that, demonstrate it's a safe environment for you. It's like public speaking. If you never tell people you're nervous, they may never know, that, oh, that activity didn't quite go as planned. But if you don't say anything, they never know, like it became fun challenge. I felt like we almost had to give more boundaries because they were having so much excitement and they were diving into activities. We're like, no, we actually have to kind of bring back, or let's put a little structure, like we're never going to finish on time because we're glad you're collaborating, but to jump back in. And I think that ability to scale up or scale down, and
Mhm.
when I mean facilitation scaling, as in push for them to do more or for you to step in more, what point, and like you said, that's absolutely experience. But try it, I think it was good too as facilitator guide, you help list out other activities, or even let's change the technology. I think I love the evolution of like the roles, like getting people to self-select their roles. I think we did the first round where we only asked the timekeeper. And like some people got it, some people didn't quite. But then when we asked for, okay, get a timekeeper and a spokesperson later, like that was like we had warmed them up, and I
Mhm.
loved seeing that piece to where we could try it. That didn't work so well, but it was like the warm up, and thought about my own facilitation work. If this is the big output we want, where's the warm up? Even to your comment about having people share, can people share, the on a piece of paper on a sticky note first before they're comfortable talking, before it's
Mhm.
group conversation? And so I think that piece was really there. What was what was a question maybe you had in reflecting now on what you both saw and experienced, as what the facilitatees were doing and what you felt as a facilitator? What's a question or thought you had kind of looking back now?
So a reflection, a realization definitely is uh, if there is a typical BA, they would try to kind of keep things under control. We like to be able to oversee everything. We like to be able to have a big picture view of all of the requirements. We like to have a clear view on what's happening in such a workshop. But we had a session with about 50 people. It's very difficult to keep track of what's happening in all of those different groups. It's like 10 groups, right? So you have to start thinking, is it a problem if different groups move at different paces? Do I have to align them or not? How do I cope with that? So the initial reflex also for me is how do I keep things under control? And I think my main takeaway here is that I maybe don't have to try to keep things under control. I just have to make sure that each and every participant is engaged, feels they are contributing in a way that is valued by the others, and that the groups together are moving forward. And maybe I don't need to take control of something, but I might ask someone in the group to take control of something if they
Mm.
feel the group needs it. So it's really about learning to let go of the feeling of I need to be in control of everything.
I
So
will.
that's kind of a reflex that I really have had to learn to silence, if you will.
I'm going to jump right in on that because that was one feeling. And, again, analysts, I know we're analytical and we like ones and zeros and black and white. But there was a feeling I had and observed in myself, once an analyst, always an analyst. But exactly to your point of control, like walking into it, it was our session, like Philip. As much as we were talking about them, it was on us to deliver, on us to show up, on us to bring it. And during the session, I had the aha of, wow, this is their session. Like
Hmm.
it shifted from that ownership. It really felt like a weight left my shoulders and went to those that were in the room. It was their session. Where were they wanting to take it? And, like you said, it was a larger group. And so watching different groups have like slightly different approaches, and it felt great to just say, yeah, go for it. You know, enjoy it. Just, yep, that if that works for you, yeah, that works. Just go.
Hmm.
Not something I thought about, but it was like, it didn't even cross my mind to say, oh, well, that's not our structure. That's not, it was like, sure, just go for it. Cause like there was so much energy and there was activities going on there. It was like, well, we're hitting the mark. It's a different way. It doesn't have to be right or wrong. I think, and again, that kind of comes back to our goals. As long as we were in that direction, that was okay. And I think that's the part. And LaDonna has chimed in here. In fact, learning to let go as a facilitator is difficult, is what she
Hmm.
says. That it's
Yes.
hard to let go. What advice would you give to someone if they realize they're like, no, it's my meeting. I set it up. I'm going to elicit requirements. What are some things we might just add or kind of comment maybe for them to think about to feel like you can release this into the wild
Mhm.
and it still be okay?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I have the advantage of having 4 children. You will learn to let go very quickly with 4 children, otherwise you just get crazy. But that might not be the obvious path to do this for everyone. So again, I think practicing in small groups, one-on-one meetings. Whenever you feel like I want to impose, I want to bring into the conversation my approach, my structure, just shut up and listen. I'm using, Robert is here using the yes and technique.
Mhm.
Yes, what you're saying makes sense, and I might add this or that. So there are a couple of small techniques that you can practice in small groups, one-on-one or in groups of 3 or 4 people, to start, I guess, uh, understanding the feeling of I feel the need, I want to take control, and then learning to kind of take a step back from that feeling. Okay, the feeling is there, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to see and wait what's happening. Wait and see what's happening.
It
And it comes with practice. It's about learning how it feels, learning when is it successful to not take control, when is it not successful, and start to kind of recognize the patterns, start to find how little or how much you need to structure, you need to provide to just keep things going smoothly without getting back in control. Do I have to do this or can I ask the group to do this? And for example, often when people are starting to putting post-its on the walls, we tend to start consolidating them and structuring them. And while you are doing that, the group is losing their attention because they're not
Mhm.
actively involved anymore. So don't do that. Ask the group to do it.
I
So, yeah.
Thea chimed in here. Letting go feels scary, but necessary. And maybe the part where don't let go of like your elements. And I think maybe that's a piece, just that awareness. Maybe you don't let go of the goal of having the
Mhm.
right people in the room, of wanting a collaborative session, an engaging session. That don't let go of those things. Those you want to hold on to. Like you say, maybe those are like how we mentioned, like boundaries or guide rails. Whereas what they do, can we let go of that perspective? So, again, my thought is you don't let go of the session, but perhaps let go of something in how it plays out, what they do, how they respond. Let go of that feeling there. Whereas as long as that group's in within the box you framed, is it okay if they go
Mhm.
all over the place? I use the bowling analogy for those who've bowled, where sometimes, as long as you've got a lane, people can still bowl and they can hit the pins. There's those of us who can't bowl to save our life, and we need the little pusher and we need the little guardrail so we don't go in the gutter the whole time. We actually make it down there. Is it how you would do it? Definitely not. But I made it there, right? You still kept me in the lane. You got me to the end result. And I think those pieces, maybe that, like for those scary feelings, pick one little piece maybe to try letting go. Like you say, don't feel like you have to control that, but then don't lose control of everything around it,
Mhm.
keep some of that, and maybe that's a nice way to start. Just try a little piece each time, a little
Yes.
bit more, and realize that the world doesn't end just because you let them write it down instead of sticky notes, or they wanted to organize it. And
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
were looking for ideas with no analysis just yet, but they were going for it.
Yeah. And yes, it is scary, but again, it's learning how to appreciate how it feels to be scared. The first time you're scared, you're going to panic and you're going to make a mistake. It's like driving a mountain bike downhill. The first time you will panic in the first curve and you will probably hit the road. But as you practice, you start still having that fear, but also learning how to control it. And then you start going more smoothly. But you have to experience it a couple of times.
Mm-hmm. And I'll put a question in here before we talk about kind of our next steps, because LaDonna asked a good one here. Is it easier when you don't know the group you're facilitating? That I think it's a little interesting paradox. Can it be harder when you do know the people you're walking into and facilitating, or any thoughts on that?
Um, I tend to say it depends, but I'm now wondering, does it depend on the group or does it depend on yourself, your own perception? Um, if you know the group, you have some prior knowledge, which seems good, but might also create some bias.
Mm.
So I'm not so sure. Initially, I would say yes, knowing the group is easier because you can prepare how to control certain people. But you're actually saying that you don't want to control necessarily. So in that sense, if you don't know the group, um, it might help you make the group more responsible of things and of how things are proceeding. Give the small breakout groups instructions on the timing on how to move forward with an exercise, and give them something like I have him here with me, our beloved Elmo. I say, okay, if you think someone is speaking too long about some topic, just raise Elmo and say, okay, is this an enough? Let's move on moment. I'm asking the group, what do we think? Are we going down rabbit holes, or is this adding value to the objective we're trying to achieve? And so you give the group something. You don't need to know the people in the group to be able to make that assessment. You just give the group a neutral figure to make that assessment. And so that works equally well and maybe even better with a group you don't know. Because if you know the group, people, you might think people expect you to make the call whether someone is taking too much time speaking about their pet's project or whatever. So you're reflecting on it. I'm kind of giving an answer that is not maybe really an answer, but having a group you don't know might help you leave control to the group more easily.
Mm-hmm. And I think again, like you say, the planning, not just planning up front, but then post. Like you say, to where if we don't get everything done here today, what are our options to move forward? If we're not as collaborative today, is there opportunity for next? And that's where I think the power in this that we saw was we shifted from worrying what happens between the start and end of the
Mhm.
session, and we worried more about the pre and the post. When we
Mhm.
shifted that, then it was like, what happens, happens. So where do we recap? How do we send a follow-up? Like here today, like, is there space to ask more questions if we didn't get to every question there? Well, yeah, let's jump on LinkedIn Live. Where do we put a summary of some of these good things and expressions? We mentioned, me and Philip are putting some materials together, and, maybe we can have a published a little something more like a book. I'll put it out there to the world that talks about this and gives that structure, with guides and roadmaps that, of what others have experienced. That I think that shift there, what do you have planned like if you know the people, or let's plan extra activities if we don't know the people and they don't start engaging. But then what do we do afterwards? And I think that's a part where we get a little too excited. We send the AI note taker summaries and we're off to the next meeting. That how we pull the power out of a facilitation session isn't necessarily in the session. That's
Mhm.
theirs, the experience. It's what we do with that ahas. Where do we move it forward? What do you think your thoughts are, like you say, for moving forward now from that great session, that experience you and I had? What's next? What do you feel is that we're taking forward?
So you mean in general when facilitating a workshop or for us specifically?
Let's do both. Let's talk facilitation first. And for those
Yeah.
listening, we've got some great VAs. I see Penny all the way from UK's on. So we've got thank you, Penny. That what do we take away from this facilitated session? And then let's chime in. What are you and I going to do? Some more.
Yeah, so I think that the connection between pre, during, and during post is really important. So the check-in and the check-out at the workshop, at the physical or at the actual workshop session, in person or virtual, is key. The check-in brings people together, makes people kind of forget about their daily worries and get them tuned into the workshop. And the checkout leaves room for making sure the takeaways are clear, the next actions are clear for everyone, as well as giving feedback on how the session went. Because maybe something was not as people had expected. But if they are able to express that, you are able to take it into account in a next workshop. And that's already a very good point, making sure that you show that you take that feedback. Um, so that connection for me is really important to get things right. And then you have something to help people follow up on the next actions. Again, you might have to nudge people, but ultimately it should be their action point, not yours.
Mm.
So what do they need to do, and what do they need from you to help them do it, not the other
Ooh.
way around.
Oh, I like that. Oh, thank you for saying that. Like the part on often facilitating is to make it easy for others, right? Others to achieve their goals, their projects, their solutions. What do they need? Look at you. You're already shifted my perspective. Not about what we're doing necessarily. What are they doing? Our work is just to enable that. Whatever that is, that continues. Oh, okay. So now I've got goosebumps. So Philip, then after the session, spending time here with me, what is next? What else is next to you? Like I say, I want to codify some more of this and share it with more people because I loved what we experienced. I mean, I really did. I got to experience as much as our participants. And again, using that word, just like even that, my vocabulary has become so synonymous with using participants. I have no more attendees. Anything we're doing,
Mhm.
everyone's a participant, everyone's a
Yes.
collaborator. And so, with that collaboration in mind, what's on your roadmap, Philip? What are you thinking about? What's got to come next?
Well, I really believe that facilitation is a crucial skill for BA professionals. I think it will only become more important as the world becomes more complex, as there are opportunities to automate some of our work with better or worse results using AI, for example, which is still the hype at the moment. The collaboration between people, making sure you get different people's voices, making sure people collaborate to enable a change in the company. Facilitation is going to help with that. So I'm really keen on inspiring people with any kind of facilitation approach, technique, mindset that helps them become better, become more effective facilitators. Also, like you just said, the experience we had at BBC was a really engaging experience for us. If we can give that experience to more people, if we can have more people experience that feeling, that would be wonderful. We've already compiled a short notebook, let's say, of takeaways from during our preparation. You can find it online and we can reshare it in the LinkedIn comments. But as I was flying back home from BBC, I was reading a book on AI, and it actually gave me a lot of ideas on facilitation and how AI will or will not influence facilitation. Where can it help us? Where can it not help us? So I think I'm definitely keen on creating something. Probably a book is part of the format, but not necessarily the only one. To kind of codify, as you say, all of these things, all of these realizations and experiences that we had, things that you can find elsewhere on the internet, yeah, to share it with a wider audience.
Yeah, and I think of my own business analysis journey, and what I got to experience with you, Philip, was really joyful and didn't feel like the book knowledge I got when I first was diving into what is business analysis. It felt so much more, lifelike, human. Like you say, it was
Mhm.
that engagement and interaction that wasn't described in a checklist on how to prepare a requirements workshop. So I'm just thrilled on it. Though these chats, like, can you see how fast? Like, we don't even have to facilitate the discussion. We've got comments coming in. We're having a great time. You and I probably could continue talking. But these collaboration chats are meant to be a short chat, a small conversation of a topic, and that what I hopefully for all those watching or watching the recording is that this seeds the ideas. I love it, Philip. I like the action item. We can put the link into the comments here for our takeaways because we did kind of do a test run, not a full test run, but we shared some of our ideas with the BA community in a webinar first, and we got feedback. We saw the interaction. And so that helped us again to start the ahas before we even went into the full session, which was, I thought, a lovely way to approach, that kind of test that, be a little adaptable and, have a safe space to try. So I love to, we'll put some sharing artifacts out there on the comments, so make sure and come back to those. Thank you to everyone who's posted live and joined us live. But again, if you're watching the recording, put some more comments on there, add some more ideas. Robert's got me thinking about the whole dancing and like, lead as lightly as possible. It really resonates with me here. So trust me, like you don't want to see me bowling, okay? I'll leave that metaphor alone there. But I want to thank everyone for that. And Philip, thank you especially for being here live with me. That we might be worlds away, but it is a small community, and anyone doing greatness in all their work and just trying to add more value to the world around them, you're part of our business analysis community. In whatever shape, format you provide that value, you yourself are truly valued. So I will be on collaboration chats every month that they're scheduled under the events. Make sure to connect with Philip as well as myself. If you're not already, you can subscribe to the LinkedIn newsletter and click on our bios for more information from both of us. But with that, Philip, I'm going to say aloha for today and aloha to all our live guests. And thank everyone for joining us. Any last words of wisdom here, Philip, as we say goodbye?
Thanks for joining. Thanks for hosting. Thanks for inviting me. And yeah, just go out and try.
Go out and try. I like that. There's a whole world out there we can do a lot of good in. So thank you all for all your amazing work. Know it's adding value, and I will see you all again. Aloha, everyone.